Now, there are polls that are taking place in the country, and these polls are done on a presidential level, trying to see, who is making, who is leading here and there, and so on and so forth. Now, there's this poll that was done by an organization known as Market Intelligence Group, and they did the National Election Survey poll, which is quite interesting. So I went through their data, I looked at it, and I think it's something plausible. Whereas I might disagree with him on a few issues, but on the other hand, I can also understand, given the time at which the polls were made, because these polls were done in November last year, that is towards the end of November, and you can see that from that period of time to date, there's so many things that have happened. The killing of people, the church leaders, so many things are happening at a very faster rate that can either increase the number of voters, they can either increase the support of the incumbent or reduce his support. Now, what is also very fascinating about this poll is the gentleman who made the poll is also an NRM supporter, which is interesting. But at least you can see the neutrality in how he conducted his survey, the neutrality in how he conducted his polls. That is why I'm not making this video just because this gentleman, put Bobiwine on the top, giving him a 59.1% and giving Museveni 35.9%. The reason as why I'm making this video and why I chose this particular poll is because it is one that is actually plausible. Because you can see the polls that were made by New Vision and all the other pollers, you really see there is a lot of bias, and you really see that, of course, the state financed them to actually do those polls and show that Museveni is in the lead. And when you see the polling that these people did and you collaborated it with what is actually on the ground and what we actually see, it's a completely different ball game. Like whatever they said in those polls, they do not actually match up together. They also did not give us things like, the people, how they actually sampled the people, the methodology they used, and things of that sort. But in this poll, the gentleman shows that they randomly sampled people, and in different regions of the country, and they had to make sure that these people were actually voters. And some of them were sampled according to, they took their age, trying to know the age range, the kind of age range, what age range is voting for what gender is voting for what, which is really interesting. And for me, such kind of data, gives us a reflection on how the election will be come 2021. Now, Uganda is divided into 16 sub-regions, and those are the sub-regions that these guys polled. These polls are not representative of what is actually going to happen, but it gives us some sort of a picture, because given the fact that we have 17 million voters, of course they wouldn't have polled 17 million voters, but they would have picked out in the pool of these people, trying to know, you can easily make predictions, depending on the small data that you have in different regions. So we have 16 sub-regions in the country, and according to them, this is when they polled these sub-regions, these were the results, and I'll put them on the screen there. So in West Nile sub-region, Bobiwine gets 66.70, Museveni gets 33.30. Now, I will not mention the other candidates because for issues of time, but in Toro sub-region, Kyagulanyi gets 68, Museveni gets 30. In Iteso, Kyagulanyi gets 32, Museveni gets 49. In Sebeyi, Kyagulanyi gets 48, Museveni gets 51. In Renzururu, Kyagulanyi gets 72, Museveni gets 26. In Lango sub-region, Kyagulanyi gets 57, Museveni gets 42. In Kigezi sub-region, Kyagulanyi gets 44, Museveni gets 40. In Kalamoja, Kyagulanyi gets 53, Museveni gets 45. In Kampala, capital city sub-region, Kyagulanyi gets 72, Museveni gets 22. In Bugisu sub-region, Kyagulanyi gets 78, Museveni gets 20. Busoga, Kyagulanyi gets 68, Museveni gets 18. Bunyoro, Kyagulanyi gets 70, Museveni gets 28. Bukedi, Kyagulanyi gets 75, Museveni gets 23. Buganda, Kyagulanyi gets 69, Museveni gets 17. Ankole, now here Museveni gets 73, Kyagulanyi gets 24. and Acholi sub-region, Chagulanyi gets 44, Museveni gets 51. Now, as you can see, all those sub-regions that I've read for you, Chagulanyi is actually leading in 12 out of the 16 sub-regions, and Museveni is only leading in two sub-regions. Now, to this gentleman, whatever the company, the organization, gave Chagulanyi 59.1% of the total vote, and Museveni getting 35.9% of the total vote. I think that's why we see like there has been a lot of clampdown in these regions, trying to stop Bobiwine from campaigning these areas and getting these people to go to the poll. Now, we also see that whenever they polled these people, it came out that mostly, but the support that Bobiwine had was between the age of 18 and 30 plus. Most of those people were actually all voting for Bobiwine. Now, also in terms of gender, Bobiwine was actually receiving too much support within the female and male genders. Both genders, Bobiwine was actually becoming much more, much more stronger. He's much more stronger in both genders and in terms of age range. You also see that Museveni's biggest supporters, demographically, if you look at it, were people who are around like 60 and above, those old generation who went through the war in the 60s and 70s and who went through those turmoil in Uganda's Ugandan post-independence, the political turmoil that was going on. Now, most of those people, of course, have left this world. Some of them have died. Some of them have even lost interest in voting for Museveni because of how he's treating his grandchildren. And that is why this is actually showing itself in the number of people, in the type of people that are being arrested. If you see that the children that are being arrested today and that are being killed in one or the other, these children are just below 30 years old. In November last year, the killings that took place, most of these people were below 30. Daily Monitor ran a story and showed that most of these people were actually below 30. But if you go back in the 90s and maybe early 2000s there, you will see that most of these people were actually, late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s that were being arrested, being taken away and all this kind of thing. But today when you look, when Museveni is arresting people, these people, some of them are 18 years old. Some of them are 16. Those are the people that are being arrested, which is really, really a very interesting phenomenon. So that's why you see that most of these people, because the people who would have voted for Museveni, they have been demographically, outweighed, or they have been demographically, they're out completely, demographically, as we speak now, because these are the older generation. Now COVID is here, these are the grown-up people, but even the grown-up people, when you speak to them today, even Museveni's counterparts himself, they are also actually not happy with where Museveni is going and how he is actually ruling the country. If you look at people like people like Professor Kanyehamba, who were staunch supporters of Museveni and who crafted the 1995 constitution, they are the biggest critics of the president today, people like Amanya Mushega and so on and so forth. So all these kind of people now have taken so many votes away from the president. Now you also see that most people, especially from the west, the likes of Mugisha Muntu and Tumukunde, they are also taking some votes, or they are also taking a big chunk of votes away from Museveni. And there are people who look up to these people, and when they look up to them, they are like, we cannot actually vote for this gentleman. So to me, when I look at in terms of age, I think this guy was spot on. That of course most people, especially the people who are supporting Chagulanyi, are between the age of 18 and 30 plus. Chagulanyi wins in that entire age range.